Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our next session here at Connection Summit, here at CES. If you haven't met me before, I'm Kristen Hannock, Research Director here at Parks Associates. I lead our coverage of many different areas, but one area that is near and dear to my heart is that of multifamily. So think individuals and families living in apartments and condos, similar areas. That is one of the areas that we are seeing most transformed right now today by smart technologies. Multifamily, if you're not aware, is an enormous market. We've been keeping a close eye on the market size inside the United States as well as a number of other countries. In the US market alone, we estimate that by the end of 2026, we are going to have over 36 million units. This market, as I mentioned, is really being transformed right now when it comes to Internet of Things technologies, many devices being placed not just in residential units, but really across the entire property. New solutions enabled by AI, analytics, and various other software-enabled solutions. During our time today, we are going to be touching on three major areas, taking a look at market drivers for smart tech when it comes to multifamily, really taking a look also at what it takes to make some of these deployments successful, and also looking at what is necessary to scale PropTech and build for the future. To discuss these trends and more, we have an excellent lineup of panelists here today, including Dennis Kyle, SVP of Smart Building at RealPage, Teresa McGaughey, VP of Field and Partner Marketing at Calix, Jake Purcell, Senior Director at Comcast Smart Solutions, Braeden Scheer, VP of Product Management and SmartRent, and also Erik Wolf, CMO at ROCiQ. Guys, definitely feel free to go and introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Dennis.
Oh, okay. Dennis Kyle. I run Smart Building at RealPage. Our focus is on primarily managed Wi-Fi and then also IoT access control through a platform called Stratus, managed Wi-Fi under something called White Sky. And then we integrate with the larger RealPage through software and additional layers.
Very happy to have you here with us today, Dennis, and certainly looking to hear more about what the smart building kind of side of house does. Next, Teresa, can you maybe introduce yourself and a little bit about what you could do at Calix?
Sure. So Teresa McGaughey. I am with a company named Calix that is focused on developing solutions, both hardware, software, and services for service providers. Now, service providers are MSPs that are trying to bring key experiences to their end users. These can be in residential, they can be in multi-living units, multi-use units, that type of thing. So our main solution for the multi-living space is called Smart MDU, which brings together property management solutions, software, and all of the managed Wi-Fi and other services to provide an end-to-end solution.
Very happy to have you here with us today, Teresa. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Of course, Jake Purcell, Senior Director of Comcast Smart Solutions. Jake, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about this division at Comcast?
Thanks. Jake Purcell. I work for a small company called Comcast. We are a large portfolio of companies actually on the NBCU Universal family, everything from theme parks to our networks to our cable products on the Xfinity and Comcast business brand. I specifically work in our Smart Solutions group. We focus on smart technologies that sit on top of our connectivity networks. And for this topic, we'll focus mostly on the multifamily products that we provide. But we're really trying to help our clients understand, strategic partnerships and through our ecosystem of technology partners, how we can help them, drive innovation, drive ROI, and operational efficiencies across their portfolios.
Definitely going to dig into that. And one of the topics we are going to be discussing today is, of course, how some of these internet service providers and connectivity in general ties into this larger area of digital transformation when it comes to multifamily. Braeden, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself? You're working at SmartRent.
Absolutely. Well, great to be here with everybody today. Braeden Scheer, Vice President of Product at SmartRent. To give us some context on who we are, we have 3.5 million IoT devices in multifamily. We also have an access control solution. We do community Wi-Fi, tours, And we really believe in creating a smart community for the multifamily industry. And we do that along with a smart operations software and the processes for the maintenance teams to deliver a premium resident experience. And we do have a resident experience in of itself with over 1 million residents. Ultimately for us, we believe in driving income, lowering expenses, and having that best-in-class resident experience to make sure they feel comfortable and have value in their home every single day. So we're really solving a cross-section of the multifamily industry problem statements and personas, and happy to be here.
Very happy to have you here. I'm very happy to have all of you guys here with us today. Of course, Erik with ROCiQ.
And I guess I get to go last. I'm Erik Wolf. I'm the CMO at ROCiQ, and we build digital twins for multi-tenant properties, specifically for the purpose of driving NOI, reducing OpEx, and creating efficiencies in areas where properties didn't have them before.
Yes, and I know digital twins has been a topic that we've touched on before in prior Connection Summit events, and certainly want to circle back around to that pretty soon. But first, let's maybe kick things off a little bit by opening up and talking about ROI. So I know this has been a theme that we've seen a little bit earlier today, looking at where are some of these areas that are really driving value for folks, whether that is the actual consumers or in these cases, the properties that are deploying some of these solutions. So my question, and maybe Braeden, you can kick us off, what are the smart building solutions where we see actual ROI when it comes to these multifamily properties? Where are you seeing the market moving, and maybe where are there still some gaps to be addressed?
Absolutely. We're seeing right now between smart home, access control, things like community Wi-Fi, getting the infrastructure of the community into a digital modality, the ROI there 5 years ago would have been predominantly amenity fees, and still certainly is based off of amenity fees and getting incremental income, although that has transitioned over the last 5 years. And we see another second thing around asset protection, right? And making sure that you can catch the issue before it becomes a major problem and you don't have major cost on renovating or fixing these issues. And then you have the overall enablement on just operational time saving. You might think of just all of the time and hours that are spent rekeying locks or printing out physical work orders and running around the property. Having this technology set, you get ROI through those 3 streams immediately, and then you get second, third order effects through the overall life cycle of the business. And where we're seeing it go is really a transition into a multifamily asking a different set of questions in their underwriting process. The questions they're now asking themselves is, with all of this smart home community technology, with the advent of AI, what are the things that we can unlock for ourselves from an experience perspective over the next 5 years? And this is a unique moment in the industry for them to be able to have that opportunity to ask that question. And so we're now seeing a strategic imperative also be a part of the underwriting and unlocking operational efficiencies by connecting different technologies together. But to do that, they have to assess what's happening on site, where is the infrastructure today, and how do they enable the right technologies to carry them forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, so certainly I'd say a lot of very good points, Braeden, and of course to do some of these things you need connectivity as the base layer. You need to understand what these buildings look like, what's actually maybe physically present in there, some of the different opportunities to take advantage of, and certainly Jake, you can maybe address some of that from the Comcast perspective.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a couple things. One, getting much more involved earlier on in the development cycle for projects. It's no longer an afterthought. If you're talking about low voltage wireless infrastructure, and for a long time it was getting cut at the end, the budgets were shrinking, but we're not seeing that as often now. It's being moved much further forward in that development cycle, and so I think it's creating a lot of new opportunities for the industry. If you're not, if you don't think that reliable connectivity is, a part of the foundational building blocks of your development, you're totally, off basis. Like, that is as important as electricity for your residents, and we have to think resident first. From going the next layer up into those applications that Braeden was mentioning, the more traditional business cases, I think energy management has been HVAC systems, smart Thermostats has been, something that's tried and true, right? You can create a tangible business case that makes sense. The ROI is there. We see that deployed all the time now. Leak detection, fire protection, all of that is, tried and true from a risk mitigation standpoint. We're seeing that. Access control, couldn't agree more with REalPage and the technology there for amenity spaces to make it easier to use. People don't want to walk around with keys anymore, believe it or not. They want, that digital experience. And the only way that you can create that is with reliable, managed connectivity. And so I think we're seeing that is, definitely kind of the foundational, and now it's table stakes for every development when we're talking to clients right now. From a kind of the emerging trends, I think there's some really interesting things right now. EV charging infrastructure, connected EV charging infrastructure, it's a monetizable amenity. We're seeing that, start to really grow and more so in pockets, but I think, more holistically, there's only more EVs getting on the road. So that's another interesting area of technology that has been popping up. And then digital signage that I know we'll talk about with digital out-of-home media networks. Another really interesting monetizable, asset through digital advertising and communication platforms that kind of, I would say helps with some operational efficiencies with like transit communication and things like that in multifamily properties. So there's a lot of interesting emerging trends right now, AI workflows, things like that have been really exciting to see.
Yes, an absolute ton of new developments, and I think one of the things that is most exciting is that a lot of the properties that have been running these pilot projects now have enough data that they can very much validate some of these big investments they've been making and underwrite some of these kind of deals. And then Erik, you and I had been talking not too long ago about some of the big potentials behind the digital twins solutions you guys are exploring and kind of looking into. Can you talk a little bit about the ROI of those and where you see those moving forward?
So where digital twins come in, and what I think that digital twins offer that a lot of other technologies don't, is that point of integration. And to the point of my friend from that little startup, Comcast, everything is made out of the internet now. And all of the components that we're adding to these buildings are connected. We've got a lot of data, we've got a lot of information, but there's a big difference between information and insight. And what the digital twin allows us to do is really target the places in the operation, identify, target, optimize, figure out where the energy is leaking, figure out where our air quality is poor and where that's costing us money and other quality of life issues, figuring out where we need to tighten up the security, where the access control is. So we've got one dashboard, for lack of a better word, where we can see, control, manage, optimize the entire operation. And that's the piece that we get really excited about.
Mm-hmm. So yes, helping to actually have the information that lets you create the ROI.
Exactly, to figure out where the opportunities are and then actually have a strategy for realizing those opportunities, as opposed to the way a lot of us, when we have new technology, there's this idea, okay, well, we're going to invest and then we're going to find the money later on. Mm-hmm. And what we like being able to do is saying, well, you're going to spend the money, but you're going to see where the money can be found right away. And shortening that point of investment to return is really super important. And it's a question that a lot of people are asking about their tech investments, because everybody is going to property owners, operators, and they're asking them to make additional investments in technology. So where is that going to come back? That's a big part of what we try to answer.
Very good, very good. And Dennis, I think we were also talking not too long ago about where you guys are seeing some of the biggest ROI when it comes to these multifamily properties. And of course, you've been looking at a few different markets here, both new construction, also the retrofit environment, and you've been doing some work in energy, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects I'd probably bring to the forefront is from a macro perspective, because I think that's super relevant, right? And actually poked my head in and spent some time listening to the last panel that went through. And one of the points that was made that I very much agree with is the multifamily industry is getting a little bit squeezed. The operators are getting squeezed. Utility costs are going up. Expenses are increasing. Rents are having trouble keeping pace with that. And then you also have maintenance expense and other things going up. You know, the numbers associated with that are 10, 15% increases in utility costs, 15, 20% increases in maintenance costs. You start to run that math, and that's directly affecting the NOI from a negative perspective that the multifamily entities are facing today. And so smart technologies, managed Wi-Fi are ways to claw that back, have a direct result on the EBITDA associated with those operational entities, and then even their potential exits given the cap rates down the road, right? All of that is what plays into this. And so when you are able to show returns from everything from energy management, which we've talked about, to insurance mitigation or insurance cost reductions through leak sensors, water sensors, fire sensors, those types of things. Those are the equations that you start to run, and you start to see ROIs across those different types of categories that are in the 20 to 30% for the investment that's being made, especially when you're layering in something like managed Wi-Fi, which becomes the enabler for a lot of the infrastructure. The sensors and the control devices and everything else are utilizing down the road and across the breadth of the different properties. So I think when you look at it from that perspective and you run that math and you think of it from a multifamily perspective, an operator's perspective, that's where you start to see the return, especially with the compressed macroeconomics.
I think that if I could just tack something on to the end of that, you're absolutely right in everything you said. I think that one thing that people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around from a perspective of ROI is the car accident that you never had, right? Mm-hmm. Like how do you quantify that? How do you quantify the fact that we didn't have this disastrous event because of this water leak, or that improved access control had saved us from this security issue? We have a hard time when there's ROI that we can see and there's ROI that's a lot harder to calculate, but it's also part of the picture.
Agreed.
And we don't really know how to get there yet.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Insurance companies are pretty sophisticated. So you're right, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But I would, I guess, build on that by substantiating the math that gets done in conjunction with the insurance industry's premiums come down, right? You can't do it in isolation. So I think maybe the point is the RI gets proven in holistically from an industry perspective. In isolation, it's very hard sometimes to prove it, but when you're looking at it broadly and when you're looking at it from an industry's perspective and applying those characteristics, then it manifests fairly clearly.
And just to add one more thing too, I think it starts in a silo. Like everyone's dipping their toe a little bit in one solution, and you need that one hero solution to start. But you have to have the vision and that platform to build the holistic business model together of all those solutions, because that's where true ROI comes out of it, where it is significant. But can I initially start and get over that hump that justifies the infrastructure, that justifies putting in all of this with a real tangible type of solution, and that's always been the struggle, and especially in the brownfield retrofit market, because that hurdle is significantly higher to put in a managed Wi-Fi network or any type of network infrastructure, rewire, things like that.
I agree.
Yes,
I agree. I think it's kind of a land and expand type of approach, and I think multifamily properties, as they're thinking about it, need to always think about, okay, I start here, I expand to here, right, which I think is,
Well, that's where you get to start with the end in mind with the customer and understand where is their business today, what's the impact with their rent, what demographics are they having in their portfolio, who's competing with them at the neighborhood level, all of that context, and then you sit down with the decision makers and you say, where is it true that you want to be 5 years from now? What are the blockers that are stopping you from realizing that? And that's what changes the underwriting model to not just be a point-to-point of dollar and cents in every single deal, which very much 5 years ago was how this technology was looked at, as if I can't justify it dollar for dollar, then I'm not going to be able to make a decision to move on this. And it is a land and expand. It's a slow organic growth rate. But now, and where we're at today, I think a lot of these customers may say, I want to be able to have my single mom at this apartment just walk into every door with their groceries and their kids and not go wrestle for keys. What's the price and the value of that? How do you underwrite that? You need to have the core infrastructure for that, but it becomes a brand promise they want to deliver. And so if you can think through how to position these technologies in that way, you get strategic imperative that backs the adoption, and it's not just the point-to-point underwriting. You kind of have both that blend in and help you be successful there.
Yes, and I think it's a challenging market depending on where you are in the country too, because we have seen across last year, rents have somewhat stalled out. There's been a little bit of a return to growth, but properties are looking at, okay, how do I actually get some new revenues in? How do I improve my margins? But I'm very interested also to hear from Teresa on this ROI question. Calix, of course, and you guys are in a little bit of a different point of the market. You have a lot of partners working in a lot of areas. So where are you seeing maybe the ROI here? Where are your partners or multifamily properties actually focusing their attention?
Well, first I'm going to start a little bit and follow up with what Braeden was saying on the what is it that actually customers are looking for? Because in your point, Kristen is absolutely right. It depends on where they are in the country, depends on what types of buildings, if they're in cities, if they're not in cities, if they're urban areas, what rural areas I should say, because there's new trends in some of the buildings. I mean, right now, there's some interesting trends going on, specifically in downtown Chicago, for instance, where the apartment, the actual living space is like as small as many of our kitchens might be. And then they actually live in a common area. It's actually really interesting to see that these types of places are happening. And it happens to come from some of the younger generations that are living in these kind of buildings. And that then drives different needs in the buildings. So then when you start to think about ROI, you start to take it, okay, wait a minute, now I'm looking at buildings that have large common areas where there are going to be lots of people in one various area. They might be streaming TV, video, multiple people sitting at a table all watching separate video. So now you get to a completely different scenario. And in that case, the base starts with, and I think everyone has said this, the base starts with solid Wi-Fi, solid connectivity. But build on that with managed Wi-Fi in the sense of making sure that you can actually understand how that connectivity is working across the entire property. Once you do that, then you can start to see ROI with some of the various things that you put in. EV chargers to make sure that those that have electric vehicles can charge their cars. They're gonna be willing to pay for that type of a service, so you can get additional return from those things. We've already talked about leak sensors and all of those types of pieces as well. All of those will have benefit, whether it come from the data that the insurance company says, I give you discounts because of that, or if it comes from, as Kyle mentions, Erik mentions that future, those incidences that didn't happen, they all have benefit from that perspective. But to the point, it really starts with a very solid managed Wi-Fi across the entire solution. And one last piece is, I think you may even bring this up, and I may get ahead of you here, sorry about that, is there's multi-use type buildings. So when you get into that building that has maybe businesses down at the bottom, you have common areas, you have all of those, you have to be able to scale across those types of solutions, whether they be businesses, they require different security, and whether they be resident, and have the ability to go across all of those areas. So that is all built into it. And when you do that, especially if you can offer to businesses in the common building, you're going to have a better ROI again.
That's an excellent point. So certainly being able to serve these different types of environments, mixed use is increasingly common. As you're saying, we're seeing a lot of, again, as you're saying, generational shifts when it comes to utilization of space and preferences around that utilization. And of course, being able to track the amenities that people are actually using is of critical importance to make sure that you're not wasting money, first off, and then second, that you're actually meeting the expectations of your residents. But I think that there is another very interesting kind of angle here, looking at maybe what are the improvements that are making installation and integration of some of these smart technologies easier for properties. And of course, you guys brought up that connectivity is this foundational layer. You have to have it. It's absolutely critical. But I've also been, over the last few months, talking with owners and operators of different properties, and they're, even based on just what they're sharing with me, having challenges when it comes to actually installing smart door locks inside the physical doors, because sometimes those don't match up. They might be dealing with buildings of different ages and trying to integrate the smart thermostats in with the HVAC. It's a challenge finding down models, or tracking down models that are actually compatible. So how are companies maybe making this process easier? And anyone who wants to jump in, definitely feel free.
Happy to jump in first and just give some context from how we have experienced that over the last 7 years, and sort of how that impact really translate to a better resident experience and a great on-site team experience. The first thing to acknowledge, and I think all of us have said at the subtext for this, is that every community is different. It's all set up differently. It all has different technology in it. Some of them may not even have what all of us in this room might define as technology, right? Some are just physical keys. Some of these assets have been live for 50, 60 years. And this is why smart home tech on the consumer side doesn't translate well into multifamily on the face of it. Because you might think, well, I have this great smart lock and it has all these amazing features, but by the time you think about the multifamily context, that door may have been repainted like 5, 6 times in the last 20 years. It may not literally fit on that. The borehole may not be wide enough to fit the deadbolt when you throw it. Like, there's so much construction-based nuance in this industry when you're applying. There may not be a common wire for your thermostat, so now you have to, if you have the best, most snazzy smart thermostat, but it's on Wi-Fi and you run it on battery, it's going to die pretty quick. And well, that's not great for multifamily, because that means they have to send a maintenance person in there to do that, right? And so not that Wi-Fi thermostats are bad, but again, construction and technology and the customer experience all play together here, and you need a common wire to power the thermostat. So all of that, zooming back out on the best installation process, we've certainly seen one thing that's unique is on that brownfield retrofit side of things. You first start with, what is the customer's problem statement at the community itself? What type of community, what's their budget, what are they trying to accomplish? That helps guide you by the time you go and do a survey of that community on, I'm gonna go look through all the doors, I'm gonna look at the walls, we're gonna try to get a sense of where are all the gotchas, because we could go and ship you a package of a bunch of locks and thermostats, but if we didn't check the common wires, the boreholes, the doors, by the time we go do the install, you're gonna have a really bad experience, and things may be offline, the resident may be frustrated, and then that just nuked all the underwriting we had in our beautiful spreadsheets going into the whole conversation to begin with. So we do that survey. After that survey is when you have to really coordinate the installs with the thought process of, how do I enable the property management team on site successfully, get them trained, help them understand how to communicate the value to the residents? Because we have to keep in mind, a lot of these residents are not familiar with how to use this type of technology in their apartment from the context of it was provided for them. People can go to Amazon and buy some smart home tech and use it themselves, but there's a nuance on a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, which is the property bought it, it's installed via the property, and now the resident can use it. But you have to, there's an education curve that you have to close there and set good expectations around. So train them, train the staff, and then you have to also be very sensitive on your construction timeline. This is not just a new development, you stand up 4 walls and drywall and put that all together. You're going into somebody's home. You're going into somebody's home and you're doing an install. So you have to work on the scheduling with them. You have to make sure that you are clean, that you have to make sure that you are efficient with your time. And so the technology is not just the thermostat or the lock, but now the technology becomes, how do you pair that with a good software that makes it efficient to do the install? How do you integrate with your own devices, but other devices in the industry to make sure it's efficient and it's accurate and it works well from day one? And then From there, you just start with the experience, and then there's a whole different ball game on how to make that a great experience post-install, but that's been some of our experience with it.
I think the other, I mean, there's two different, customers, I think, in a lot of senses in multifamily that makes it really unique that you alluded to early on. You have your on-site property management staff, facilities, folks, and I think early on, go back 10 years ago when, we were merging, trying to force smart home tech into apartments. We thought there was a hypothesis that, hey, these facilities folks and these on-site staff were going to be able to take on the burden of doing a lot of this work and heavy lifting. And that clearly failed miserably. They're not technology experts. It's not their job. And so, over the last decade, you really had to rethink, how do we create a better experience, not just for the actual resident, right? There's a lot of cool tech out there, great products. But how do we create a better experience and really drive value to the on-site property management staff, whether it's on the maintenance side for replacing batteries or resetting devices, but how do we give them the tools so that they can, or have automation with bots and technology to do it ahead of it, predictive, so that they don't have to do anything. So I think that's been a big lesson learned over the years, trying to figure out how do we make this as easy as possible from a property management staff experience, and creating solutions that really help with that. I think cloud-based applications and cloud-to-cloud APIs for different products has really helped a lot with that, removing a lot of the on-site hardware, racked equipment. We try to avoid that as much as possible now. And then on the actual, getting down to a lot of what Braeden talked about of like actual deployment planning, I think kitting has been like one of the biggest learnings we have. How can we kit, prep, configure as much of the hardware as possible so that you almost have, a touchless deployment, when folks are coming out and doing the physical install. Because there are so many different solutions, so many different niche type of things, that prior planning ahead of it is, mission critical, so that when something does go wrong on site, and it will 100%, how can you be flexible and have, the support resources to make that, become a reality? And I think scalability with lots of boots on the ground where they need to be everywhere from a support perspective. I know when I think about companies that you want to partner with, we are obviously one of those companies that has the boots on the ground that can, go out and do that. That's another mission critical component of all of this.
But all of that you just mentioned, that influences the product design of the hardware itself.
Yep.
And that's why it's so tough to go to a show like this and see all of the amazing technology.
Yep.
Be like, I wish I could just put this into an apartment, because
It doesn't work.
to create efficiency on the install, you might have to change the actual firmware that's on that device. The pairing process has to be configured differently, and so it impacts the entire tech stack.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's one where I was going to go with the point here, is that one, there's APIs, so you mentioned, how do we integrate all of this together? Because you want to have the situation where the property management, folks on site can have visually see what's going on, get into it. So you can physically install all these things, but then how do you actually communicate with them? And right now, I'd say we're an industry of many and make it really hard from a scale and automation perspective. So there's probably some work that we as an industry here, and everyone in the audience, can spend some time thinking about how do we do a better job of making it so that it's all easy to use, integrated together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. It is a big one, and I'm
I'm
not sure there's an easy answer.
I'm not sure, and I was going to make a joke. This feels like one of my team meetings where we're never going to get through all this content, but we get done because I'm watching the clock. But I'm going to attempt to tie kind of macro and micro together as quickly and succinctly as I can. You led the witness. I didn't take it, but I'll take it now on the subject of retrofit, right? One of the things that I think is driving the industry, frankly, is the success we've seen in new construction to date, right? New construction's down, right? Got it, understood. But it's created this phenomenon where for every newly constructed building on a block, there's 5 to 10 others that are needing to do something in order to catch up, which also plays into the retrofit, or the, I should say rather, I used the wrong word there, the ROI story, right? Because not only does it become a point-by-point ROI calculation, and say, okay, so the building down the street with the new infrastructure is charging and able to sustain $200-300 more a month in rent fees, right? Part of that equation, that math now gets calculated into how do I substantiate the investments I need to make around retrofitting to catch up. Frankly, I hate that word. It's an industry term. It's more of a modernization, right? We do that with our homes. We do that everywhere else. It's a very similar type of context, because when you modernize your home, you get more resale value, right? So it's an equation that we all get very adept at. And then, back to the, I think the gist of this question, also when you are in and doing somebody's home now, it is all about an area that has totally agree with you, Braeden, and has very little to do with technology at that point. It's all about customer service, it's all about the elegant solution, it's all about the high touch environment, and then frankly, all comes down to like Google reviews. Like, this is as surprising as that is. Because your end user now is going to directly review their experience with you, right?
Absolutely.
So focusing on that is key to the solution set.
Yes, I think one of the interesting findings that we've had come out of our direct primary research, so actually surveying residents of these multifamily properties, has been that if you do smart technology, smart amenities right, it has a very powerful impact to your NPS. But if you do them wrong, your NPS becomes extremely negative. So it is the difference between liking and recommending a property and staying there longer and leaving and going someplace else.
That's right.
So very, very impactful.
I think it's also important to recognize that even though we're all very ingrained in the smart technology and there's all of these things that we can do, it's not necessary for the owner or operator of a building or a portfolio of buildings to drink from the fire hose. You actually can wade into this, especially in a, and I agree, the retrofit word is not, how about revitalization? When we are revitalizing a property, we can find the low-hanging fruit. We can figure out what's the place that we can start that's going to have the biggest impact for the least amount of pain. And giving people a place to start is very often, cause it's really hard to jump in with both feet, especially when the building's already there. We've got an existing infrastructure. There's an element of pragmatism that we should always be employing when we're talking about revitalizing something that's already there.
Yes, and certainly different challenges depending on the age of the building and what's already in place. So we only have a few minutes left, and audience members, I would like to invite you after this panel is over. Please feel free to certainly come up and talk to our panelists if you have any questions. But until then, I have a very quick lightning round for you guys. And maybe we can kick things off with Teresa over on the far end, and just kind of a very quick, maybe one word, maybe a quick sentence. Hyped or underhyped? Overhyped or underhyped? Managed Wi-Fi.
Underhyped, as I highlighted. It's the basis for everything else.
Okay, access control when it comes to the perimeter or the base building?
Everything. So if you want to charge your vehicles, if you want to be using video down by the pool, if you want, as a customer, if you want to be managing the property, leak sensors, you want to, I mean, without good connectivity, that leak sensor may not tell you there's a problem.
All right, underhyped or overhyped? Smart door locks on the residential unit?
Is that to me or to Teresa?
Well, Teresa, certainly feel free to tackle that, or if you don't have an opinion, Dennis?
First, I'm going to pile on for managed Wi-Fi. Underhyped, critical, necessary. It's the backbone to everything.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
thoroughly agree with you. And then locks, I think you got to split it. Like I think access control in the modern day associated with whether it's Instacart, the nanny, or what have you is critical. Maintenance, all of those roll into the ROI. And then I think unit locks, maybe differentiated ROI, but access control, then unit locks, maybe how I'd look at it.
All right, thoughts on kind of video analytics, digital signage? And anyone, feel free to jump on. I know we're at about time, so not looking to take up too much of your lunch break, folks.
I think on the digital signage side, definitely underhyped right now. I think it's emerging. I think there's real opportunity to help, especially on the media side, bringing together large media advertisers that want to reach in apartment buildings. You see it, with like the Walmart media networks and other media networks that are out there, that they're really driving monetization, something really unique and interesting in the multifamily space and mixed use space that is a very much so emerging market. On the video analytics side, I think that's definitely underhyped, but is emerging. Computer vision technology in general, it drives insights into digital twins and other single pane of glass types of solutions that help property managers do more with less. So if you want to know who's in the pool after hours when they're not supposed to be, and that can alert someone, now you have extra eyes on your property and help with investigations or other insurance risk mitigation types of solutions.
Yes, and then last question to you, Braeden. Thoughts on maybe Matter standard in multifamily, EV charging, overhyped, underhyped?
I think Matter today is still a bit overhyped as it relates to multifamily. Matter itself, just it's a promising standard. There's pros and cons to all of the standards, but in multifamily, I don't think the standards themselves matter by definition. I think it's more about what is the actual form factor of the hardware, what is the experience it enables for the customer, and there hasn't been enough proliferation of those devices in the multifamily context yet. But as it relates to EV charging and some other things of that nature, I think EV charging is perhaps, maybe it's a hot take, but I think it's also a little overhyped in the context of multifamily. I think people, of course, are going to have your EVs, but in multifamily, there could be an EV charger down the street. Maybe they're going to do 2 or 3 at a site, but this idea that across the nation, every single revitalized plan is going to have 30-40% be EV, just the cost versus the value, I don't think is there today. And I think you're going to see a lot of these EV companies in multifamily have to expand their value prop out of just pure play EV and do more energy, because the incentives have changed across the industry for that. So I think it's a staple, but I think it's one that doesn't have the prominence that maybe we get conflated to typically.
I'm going to debate you 1 second on EV charging, because I think it could be, especially if you're in a very urban city, downtown area, an actual value add, because if you have an electric vehicle, you want to be able to charge it while you're doing something else, as opposed to have to drive to some location, sit there and charge it. It's much better if you get up in the morning and it's ready to go. Or if you're doing a commute, that would be a much better way to go.
I think the problem
and so I think
is
that there's value and an opportunity to get essentially ROI from maybe even charging more because you have a charger available.
But I think to that point, the nuance may be, it's not just all level 2s that you're rolling out across these. There may be more proliferation of level 1s, and the way you implement them at a community could be a subset instead of a broader sense, right? And I think over the last 3 years, we've seen a big push on the level 2s, whether it's online, offline. I just don't think you're gonna see that type of scale across the industry. But I do think the level 1 is gonna be interesting, because you are right, like for sure, if you have an EV, that'd be a great use case, but also properties have limited budgets, underwrite it just on a bunch of level 2s on site isn't always gonna pan out.
Yes, and I think once you hit that critical mass of EV users, EV adopters, is when it really, really starts adding the value and taking off. Just a question of when we think market's going to get there and which market first.
I don't know, walking down the street here in Vegas, there's quite a few of them as you see them driving, so.
I was watching the clock, trying to make sure we don't go too far deep, but I think again, it comes to you're competing with a new building versus an existing building, right? And tenants will choose a building based on whether it meets their needs. And as EVs continue to proliferate, people will make that choice, right? So I think it's part of that very same equation. And so my answer would be probably overhyped because they're hyped to such a degree. But then I would counter that and say also, some level of table stakes, almost where I'm making the differentiator around access control and unit locks. Both are important. It's just how much noise is associated with it.
Yes, we like to overestimate what's going to happen in the next 5 years and underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10. So,
There you go.
but yes, thank you all so very much, everyone. I'm afraid that's all that we have time for today. We are going to be back at 1 o'clock for our next panel, taking a look at modern security. And as I mentioned, audience members, definitely feel free to come and talk to our great lineup of panelists if you have any questions about this topic or similar topics. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.